The Killing Floor franchise has been running for nearly 2 decades, 3 games, multiple seasons of content, a lore bible that stretches back to a dead child in an underground London lab and forward to extra-dimensional experiments at the bottom of the world in 2091. And across all of it, the franchise has left a trail of questions it has never fully answered, not accidentally, deliberately. The way good storytelling always leaves threads hanging until the moment they can be pulled in a way that changes everything that came before. Season 4 drops in 9 days. And some of these questions are about to get answers, others might wait even longer. And a few of them are so deep in the franchise's history that the answer might never come at all. This is every major unanswered question in the Killing Floor universe, where each one comes from, what the evidence suggests, and what Season 4 might finally be about to reveal. If you're new to this series and have never played any of the games, you're in exactly the right place. We have covered the full story across this series and links to everything are in the playlist below. But you do not need any prior knowledge to follow this one. Every question gets its own context before we dig into it. Let's get into it. Question 1. Where is the Patriarch? Kevin Clamely, the founder and former CEO of Horizon Biotech, the man who tried to clone his dead son and accidentally created the most dangerous bioweapon in human history, transformed his own body into a massive armored boss creature called the Patriarch rather than face arrest when the military closed in on him during the original London outbreak. He survived Killing Floor 1 by escaping to Paris, while 2 of his clones were destroyed by mercenaries fighting through London's subway system. In Killing Floor 2, he returned upgraded and more dangerous than before, working alongside Hans Volter, a former Nazi scientist who had kept himself alive for decades through illegal biological experiments, to militarize new specimen variants across Europe. And then KF3 jumped 70 years forward to 2091. The Patriarch is nowhere to be found. The franchise has never officially said what happened to him in those 70 years. One lore source suggests he may have been killed by one of his own clones at some point during KF2, which would mean every Patriarch encounter in that game after a certain point involved a copy rather than the original. Others believe he is still out there somewhere, continuing to upgrade himself through decades nobody was watching closely enough. The community's strongest evidence that he is coming back is the confirmation of his voice actor's involvement with KF3 through cast listings discovered before Season 4's announcement. A voice actor attached to a game with no confirmed appearance yet almost always means an appearance is planned. Season 4 drops in 9 days. If the Patriarch comes back, the franchise's biggest villain returning after 70 years of absence, while his granddaughter Cordelia leads the only real resistance against the company he founded, would be the most significant story moment in the franchise's history. Season 4 answering the Patriarch question would change everything, but it would also immediately raise the question of what happened to the other member of his family who was last seen heading in the same direction he was heading. Question 2. What happened to Rachel Clamely? Rachel Clamely. Kevin's daughter grew up without her father in her formative years, raised by relatives across Boston, Montreal, and Manchester, while Kevin was building Horizon into the most dangerous research operation in human history. She followed him into science anyway, hoping perhaps for some version of his approval, and ended up working at the National Labs in London when the outbreak began. Rather than becoming part of what her father built, she opposed it. She helped mercenaries fighting through London locate and destroy her father's clone laboratory hidden beneath a subway station. She was one of the few people actively working against Horizon from the inside during KF1's events, and then she disappeared. When she resurfaced in Killing Floor 2, everything had changed. Rachel had spent the years between KF1 and KF2 attempting to build something that could stop her father. She mutated herself, attempting to make herself stronger, and in doing so suffered the exact same psychotic break Kevin Clamely himself had suffered. Her body became integrated into a mechanical suit she designed. She built her own army by stealing elite defense and security robots from a military force. She became the Matriarch, a boss-type creature in KF2, pursuing her father with an obsession so complete that she would kill anyone she perceived as standing between them. A daughter who tried to stop her father ended up becoming almost exactly what she was fighting, and in 2091 nobody knows where she is. Whether the Matriarch is still out there somewhere in her mutated form. Whether she eventually found her father or was destroyed by him or by the mercenaries still fighting through the outbreak. Whether the Stalker Zeds, believed by the community to be based on Rachel's genetic material without her knowledge or consent, connect her to what Horizon and Moorcroft are doing in the current story. Rachel Clamely's fate is one of the most compelling unresolved threads in the entire franchise. And with Season 4 potentially bringing back the Patriarch, the question of where his daughter is becomes significantly more important than it has been for years. Question 3. Who actually activated the Clamefield facility? We covered this in detail in the Clamefield outbreak video, but it belongs in this list because it is the most recent and most urgent unanswered question in KF3's current story. Clamefield, Nevada is the company megacity Horizon built for its own employees, named after the Clamely family, corporate architecture, parks and markets and residential towers where Horizon's most trusted workers lived and raised families. Underneath that city, Horizon had secretly built a Z storage facility without telling anyone who lived above it, and then the facility was activated. The official description uses one word: inexplicable. Masterson III, the former Horizon chief of security and grandson of Bill Masterson Sr., who had been connected to the franchise's story since its earliest days, was scapegoated for the disaster and publicly ousted despite the evidence pointing more at institutional failure than at any decision he personally made. The word scapegoated is doing important work there. It implies the blame was placed on him deliberately rather than earned through his own actions. Nightfall was sent to Clamefield with two objectives: neutralize the Z threat and find out who actually unleashed them and why. The franchise has not confirmed who did it. Was it a genuine systems failure inside a facility that should have had multiple redundancies? Was it sabotage from inside Horizon, someone with access to the most secured internal systems deliberately triggering an outbreak in the company's own headquarters city? Was it an external actor, meaning Nightfall or some other organization has capabilities Horizon does not know about? Every possible answer raises more questions than it resolves, and Season 4, coming in 9 days, may finally start providing some of them. Question 4. What are Moorcroft's extra-dimensional experiments? Dr. Emmanuel Moorcroft, Horizon's current chief scientist and head of the most restricted research division the company operates, has been developing a substance called the mire that he believes represents the next step in human evolution. He has been testing it on living subjects. He has been producing entirely new categories of Z that did not exist at any earlier point in the franchise's history. And then Operation Deep Freeze tracked him to Antarctica, the Brunt Ice Shelf, one of the most remote locations on the planet, where Moorcroft and his mire experiments had been tracked down operating in what the official description calls an abandoned scientific research base with an attached dig site. The narrative mission sent Nightfall to uncover his latest extra-dimensional experiments and stop him before he becomes unstoppable. Extra-dimensional, that word has been sitting in the franchise's lore since Operation Deep Freeze dropped in March 2026, and it has never been fully explained. Extra-dimensional does not mean biological. It does not mean genetic. It implies something operating outside the physical dimensions that conventional science understands, which is a category of research that goes so far beyond what Horizon was doing with cloning and genetic modification in KF1, that it almost sounds like a different kind of story entirely. What is the mire actually connected to at that level? What did Moorcroft find at the bottom of the world that pushed his research from advanced bioengineering into something described as extra-dimensional? And what does the story's confirmation that he is becoming increasingly unstable as a result of his own experiments suggest about where he personally ends up? The community has been speculating since March. Season 4 is positioned to answer this. And if the mire's extra-dimensional properties connect in some way to the Patriarch's 70 years of self-modification, the implications for what Season 4 might introduce as a threat go well beyond anything the franchise has produced before. Question 5. What is Horizon actually building toward in 2091? Here is the question nobody is asking out loud, but that sits underneath every other question on this list. 70 years after Kevin Clamely was ousted and the Patriarch escaped to Paris, Horizon is still producing Zeds, still running research divisions, still building things like the Clamefield storage facility underneath its own employees' homes. But why, in KF1 and KF2, the Z production had a clear driver? Kevin Clamely wanted to build the ultimate soldier for the government, and then after the outbreak wanted to spread his children across the world. The motivation was personal. Grief turned into obsession, turned into something that looked like a desire for dominion over whatever remained of humanity. In 2091, Kevin Clamely is unaccounted for. The Patriarch's motivations are not currently directing Horizon's operations in any confirmed way. Dr. Moorcroft believes the mire is evolution's next step and has been pursuing that belief with the resources of the most powerful corporation on Earth. But Moorcroft's personal belief does not explain what Horizon as a corporation is actually trying to accomplish by continuing to produce and deploy Zeds in 2091. Is there a person or a group inside Horizon directing the company toward a specific outcome that the story has not revealed yet? Is the company operating on pure institutional momentum, continuing to do what it has always done because dismantling that infrastructure would be more disruptive than maintaining it? Or is something else entirely driving Horizon's current operations? The answer to this question might be the most important piece of context for understanding what Season 4 is actually going to be about. Question 6. What happened to Hans Volter? Hans Volter, the former Nazi scientist who kept himself alive through illegal biological experiments for decades, collaborated with the Patriarch across both KF-1 and KF-2, militarizing specimens and upgrading the Patriarch's form in France during the European outbreak. In 2091, he is completely unaccounted for. A man who had been finding ways to keep himself alive through biological experimentation for nearly a century by the time KF2 ended has had 70 more years since then. Is he still alive, still experimenting, still connected to whatever the Patriarch has become in the decades since KF2? And here's the connection the community has been quietly making. Moorcroft's Meyer research and the extradimensional experiments in Antarctica represent the most advanced biological science in the franchise's current story. Volter spent the better part of a century pursuing the outer limits of what biology could do to keep one specific person alive indefinitely. If those two threads intersect somewhere in the story that Season 4 is about to tell, what they produce together could be something the franchise has never attempted before. Volter's fate is deliberately unresolved, and unresolved threads in this franchise tend to matter eventually. Question 7. What does Moorcroft becoming unstable actually mean? This one connects to question 4 but deserves its own moment. The story confirms directly that Moorcroft is becoming increasingly unstable as a result of whatever he has been exposing himself to in Antarctica. Rachel Clamely started as a grieving father and ended up transforming himself into the Patriarch. Rachel Clamely started as someone trying to stop her father and ended up transforming herself into the Matriarch. Both suffered psychotic breaks. Both became integrated with technology and biology in ways that erased most of what had made them human. Both became something the franchise treats as a boss-level threat after starting as a person with understandable if deeply flawed motivations. Moorcroft is showing the early signs of the same pattern. A brilliant scientist, a genuine belief in what his research can do for humanity. Increasingly unstable as a result of exposure to something he does not fully understand, surrounded by a follower who will commit crimes to protect the research and a former colleague who turned against him because she could see where it was going. If the pattern holds, Moorcroft does not end up in a cell. He ends up on the other side of a wave, something the franchise calls a boss encounter, built from a man who believed he was helping humanity evolve and pushed that belief past every limit anyone around him recognized as a limit. The Patriarch and the Matriarch were the first two iterations of that pattern. Moorcroft would be the third, and with Season 4 9 days away, the story may finally be ready to complete that arc. What Season 4 might answer 9 days? That is how long before Season 4 drops and potentially starts closing some of these threads. The Patriarch's voice actor is confirmed to be involved with KF3. Rachel's fate remains completely unresolved. The Clamefield activation has no confirmed culprit. Moorcroft's extradimensional experiments have never been fully explained. Volter is unaccounted for. And whatever Horizon is actually building toward in 2091 is still unclear enough that multiple, very different explanations remain equally possible. The franchise has been planting seeds across 3 games and 4 seasons of content in KF3. Season 4 is the most significant update the game has received since launch. And looking at every unresolved thread side by side, it feels less like a content update arriving on a schedule and more like a story that has been waiting for the right moment to pull everything tight at once. Whatever Season 4 reveals, the answers are going to change how every earlier moment in this franchise looks in retrospect, and this series has been building toward those answers since the very first video. Subscribe so you do not miss it, and drop a comment. Which of these unanswered questions do you most want Season 4 to answer? Because personally, I keep coming back to Rachel. A daughter who tried to stop her father and ended up becoming almost exactly what she was fighting has been left unresolved for 2 games now. And with the Patriarch potentially coming back in 9 days, her story feels like the one that was always going to matter most when the franchise finally decided to bring it all together. Tell me which one you think Season 4 is going to answer?